the couriers, the ambulance drivers, the supermarket staff, those in the office and those on the factory floor, those working long shifts, night shifts, 9 to 5s, those working part-time and those working full-time. My Labour Party is the party for those who keep us safe, who create the wealth, who make up the backbone of Britain. This is a project for working people all across our country. Congress, those are the people the country clapped for during the pandemic. Even the residents of Downing Street found time to stumble into the street to do it. But how have they been repaid? Just take carers as an example. This is a subject very close to my heart. For many of them, every time they had to self-isolate during the crisis, they did so at their own expense with no sick pay. That's not on. And let me be very clear, those days are coming to an end. A country that doesn't respect care work is an uncaring country. So we will strike a fair pay agreement for every care worker in the country. We'll get you around the table, and the deal you make will set a new floor, a higher floor, with more progression, more training, more rights, better standards, and yes, fairer pay. A fair pay deal for our carers. That's what people clapped for, and that's what Labour will deliver. And this goes to the heart of the Tories' failure. It's why we've had 13 years of chaos that's left our economy broken. They simply don't get that growth comes from working people. And because they don't understand that fundamental, they can't provide the secure foundations to build our country's future. To be honest, I'm not even sure they see the problem. If the City of London races ahead, whilst the rest of Britain stagnates, so long as there's a hint of growth on his spreadsheet, Rishi Sunak will claim that that's fine. But it's not. If you leave that many people behind, a nation can't grow fairly. You can't do it with low wages. You can't do it with insecure jobs and bad work, with a stand-aside government that doesn't fight for the future, without a proper industrial strategy. The average British family is £8,800 poorer than in other advanced economies, and economies like France, Germany, and the Netherlands. Economies that have better collective bargaining, have stronger workers' rights, and a fairer share of wealth across their country. So we will strengthen the role of trade unions in our society. And like you, I want to see Amazon and businesses like it recognise trade unions. Nobody does their best work if they're racked with fear about the future, if their insecure contract gives them no protection to stand up for their rights at work, or a proper safety net that doesn't support them properly. That's what Labour's New Deal for working people is about. That's why we'll ban zero-hour contracts, extend parental leave, strengthen flexible working, better protections for pregnant women, close the ethnicity pay gap, fundamental rights from day one, statutory sick pay for all, no more one-sided flexibility, and no more fire and rehire. For years, working people have been told that good pay, fair work and dignity are somehow barriers to growth. Well, no more. A reformed labour market, where we finally make work pay, provide the security denied to working people for decades. That's my mission on growth. But you know, We're not a nation apart. The world around us is changing, and changing fast. President Biden once said, "When I hear climate change, I think jobs." When Labour sets out our mission for Britain to become a clean energy superpower, we are thinking jobs too. For too long, Britain has allowed the opportunities of the new energy technologies to pass us by. Without a plan, the energy industries that we rely on will wither and decline. Now, the Tories think it's the market doing its job when British industry falls behind. It's not some glitch in their model, it is their model. Yet, our allies around the democratic world are waking up to the threat of energy insecurity and the opportunity of economic security. Change is coming. And yes, it can unsettle us. But mark my words, on my watch, good jobs, good union jobs, will be fundamental to that change. Decent pay, respect, dignity and fairness, cleaner, safer work, new and better infrastructure for Britain. These are the purposes of our party, and they are historic prizes we will win again. Now, I won't pretend that just because a technology is greener, that automatically makes working conditions fairer. So as new nuclear, battery factories and offshore wind repower Britain, Britain will supply strong chains that create jobs, skills and decent wages here in Britain. And we'll work with you to seize the opportunities of hydrogen, carbon capture and storage. Our Green Prosperity Plan, like President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, is our plan for growth. And because we're Labour, it is a plan for working people, their jobs and their prosperity. We will create a new company, GB Energy, and through that vehicle, we will take advantage of the opportunities that we have. And because it's right for jobs, because it's right for growth, because it's right for energy independence, then yes, it will be publicly owned. GB Energy will be good for Britain and good for business. It will have twin goals: leading the way in better jobs and lower bills. And I'm clear-eyed about how tough the challenges that face us are. We have all seen what happens when politicians see change as something to stand and stare at in awe, when government surrenders working people to the power of the market, when the future comes and people are left behind. That is why the next election is so important for the future of working people. Holding back the future is no way to growth. But equally, there is no way to growth that doesn't involve bending and shaping that future. We can create a new business model for Britain, one which creates economic security and grows not just our productivity, but our hope and our optimism. Labour in government will work with unions and with industry. We will always have a stake. We will always have skin in the game. We will always see the fight for working people as our driving purpose. Because for us, this is personal. Together, we will make Britain work better. Together, we will give working people their future back. Together, we will build a better Britain. Thank you, Congress. Thank you. Thank you, Congress. Thank you, Congress. Thank you. I think and hope that we're now going to have some questions from members of the audience, members of GMB. And if I've got this right, they're going to come up so that everybody can hear the questions. And I think the first question is Mary. I'm sorry, Mary. Morning.
We have undertaken a great amount of work to construct the New Deal for working people, a campaign mandate to win the next general election for families and fairness. Can you give us a firm commitment that the Labour Party will fully support the New Deal and be bold in campaigning for a fairer and more equal country for millions of families and working people?
Yes.
What can I say to that?
Look, friends and colleagues, as we've been in opposition, we've developed actually very few bits of legislation that are ready to hit the ground on day one. But our New Deal for working people is one of those bits of legislation. In fact, it was the first bit of legislation that we drafted. And I'm very proud that it was agreed with the trade unions. We worked on this together. Many people in this room contributed to the New Deal for working people. It was announced, as you know, by Angela Rayner back in 2021 at our conference. I've obviously mentioned it in my speech now, Mary, because just setting out some of the issues that are in it. And we've made a commitment that this will be legislation in the first 100 days of a Labour government. So it's a big yes. It's a prepared piece of work. It's a joint piece of work. And we've got a timetable for implementing it. It is, the final thing I'd say is, and I said this when we launched the document, this is why winning an election is so important. Because that piece of draft legislation has two futures. If we don't win the election, it'll gather dust on a shelf. And you'll have other legislation brought in by the next Tory government that does even more damage to your rights. That's one route. The other route is we go forward, we win that election, and we implement it within the first 100 days together with you. That's the future I want for our country. Thank you, Mary.
My name is Sarah and I'm from the Wales and South West region. So you just said that care work is really close to your heart. So care workers are paid just a few pennies above minimum wage on average. The average hourly wage was £10.03 last year. Labour has said it would look at implementing a fair pay agreement, which you just mentioned, in the social care, would set an hourly minimum, but you've not said what that minimum should be. Can I ask you as party leader what you think it should be?
Sarah, can I first make it clear that I deeply respect the work of care workers, not least because, as you may know, my sister's a care worker. And therefore I know week by week, month by month, year by year, just how hard it is working in the care sector. And we are absolutely determined to change this and to change it comprehensively. And that's why the Fair Pay Agreement is so important. And our commitment is to the first pay agreement, fair pay agreement, I want to be for carers. I want that to be the lead case, if you like. And that will be negotiated by you, because this is a fair pay agreement which involves the unions agreeing across the country. So I don't want different care providers picking off groups of workers wherever they are. I want one structure, one agreement across the country. And that is intended, as I set out in the speech, to set a floor, a higher floor for every single care worker. And that will involve terms and conditions, dignity, respect. I think I'm right in saying, Sarah, you'll know this better than me, that 1 in 3 people who leave the care sector do so to join the NHS, and they do that because they feel there's better progression in the NHS. And so we have to deal with progression, training, respect, but it also has to deal with pay. And it has to be higher pay, as I've set out. Now, as to the rate of pay, you will be negotiating that around the table. And you will know what you think is right in whichever year it is, 2024, maybe 2025, that we're able to get this agreement over the line. You will negotiate that rate. You will know what's right for your members. And once that's done, the agreement will then be binding for all care workers, including those who aren't able to negotiate a better rate for themselves. So that's how I see it working, Sarah. Thank you for everything you do, but this is going to be an important part of what I hope we'll be able to do in the very early years of the next Labour government. Thank you, Sarah. And I think we've got Dave, possibly.
Representing North East Yorkshire and Humber. I'm an engineer, work for British Gas, but also speaking for all the workers in the gas industry. There's a lot of talk about just transition in the energy sector, but right now it's just that talk. The UK has lost and continues to lose out on high-quality unionised manufacturing renewables jobs? Will you give serious support to workers like me in the energy sector and our families by calling for a moratorium on future offshore wind projects until the UK has secured the onshoring of jobs in this sector so that we can have a proper jobs transition?
Well, Dave, look, I mean, at the heart of your question is a really important issue, which is jobs in here in the UK. And I think many people in this union, working people across the country, have been badly let down. And we've got to do more about it, Dave. Now, I don't actually think a moratorium is the way forward. But I do think that we've got to use vehicles like GB Energy. That will be a publicly owned vehicle where we determine where the jobs are to ensure that they are here in the UK. And that we have incentives in contracts to look at supply chains and where the jobs are for the supply chain. So, Dave, let me just give you an example that shows I absolutely understand where you're coming from. I was at Hinkley Point C yesterday, amongst other things, meeting the GMB reps there. And that's a fantastic project about the future of nuclear in this country. It's way behind schedule because the government's been dithering and delaying. But as Gary Smith pointed out to me this morning, in the supply chain to Hinkley Point, the only thing that's made in Britain is the concrete. Everything else comes from abroad. That's got to be wrong. And you talk about renewables, Dave. In Whiteley's, which, as you know, is the onshore wind farm just outside Glasgow, I think the biggest one in the UK, I went there to see for myself how it worked, to understand the challenges. And when I asked how many of these, I think it's 350 wind turbines, were built in Britain, the answer was none of them. They came from Indonesia because we'd lost the race to get those jobs. So, Dave, at the heart of your question is something I believe in very strongly, which is the next generation of jobs, the jobs that we need to secure and hold on to, the jobs of the future. We have to find a way of making sure that they're here in the UK. And I want the main jobs, the project jobs in renewables and other sectors to be here in the UK. And I want the supply chain jobs to be here in the UK as well. Thank you very much, Dave. A really, really important point. I think I've got Jason.
Hello, Keir. I'm the delegate for North Western Irish. Keir, Labour has said when it's in power, it will bring back the two-tier code that would mean outsourced workers are paid the same as those in-house. You've also said that you would bring about the biggest wave of insourcing in a generation. Can you tell us what contracts you'd prioritise bringing back?
Yeah, Jason, look, thank you for raising that important issue. This is obviously, as you know, not a new issue. This one has been with us for a very, very long time. That's why the two-tier code was introduced by the last Labour government. But then, shamelessly, it was scrapped by the coalition government as soon as they got the first opportunity to do so. So we've got to reinstate it. We've got to get it back. And what Angela Rayner is working on with the GMB, I'm glad to say, is how we not just bring it back, but how we strengthen it. And that's the key issue. Those discussions are going on with your colleagues. But Rachel Reeves, you mentioned this, Dave, Jason, set the direction of travel, really, because she talked about the biggest wave of insourcing. And that, for me, is the most important thing, to make sure that we get the skills, the respect, the pay, the terms and conditions exactly where they should be. So on that code, we need to reinstate it. Please keep working with Angela on how we strengthen that. And I look forward to working with you on it as well. Thank you very much, Jason. I've got, I think, Garfield. Garfield.
Good morning, Sir Keir.
Hi.
Midlands Region, GMB, Coventry Striker. I would like to take this opportunity to convey this to you, please. Amazon is one of the world's wealthiest corporations, offering the workers in the UK a pay rise in pennies. Despite this, Amazon is a beneficiary of payouts from the public purse, receiving 684 million in central and local government contracts since 2018. Amazon is an irresponsible employer, driving down paying conditions, refusing to recognise its workers. This makes a Conservative government happy with this state of affairs. Our question to you at GMB Amazon: what will your Labour government do to stop this flow of public money to Amazon if they continue to refuse recognition of the workers' union?
Look, Garfield, look. thank you for raising that. And can I just start by acknowledging the campaign that GMB is running on this? A fantastic campaign, a really important campaign, and one that I fully support. And I want to see Amazon recognise trade unions. And it's really important I say that, and I'm clear about that. And I just want to say to this audience, I've come here and I've said that in my speech today. But I also say it in my speeches to the CBI and to the British Chamber of Commerce, because I come here and talk about the importance of business and how we need to partner with business, and I talk to business about how we need to partner and work with trade unions. So that's fundamentally important. And if I just came here and said it and didn't say it there, you wouldn't believe I meant it. So I'm absolutely giving you that assurance. And in terms of how we bring this about, I think public procurement, I think the point you make about contracts is really important. It's not a free-for-all. There's a lot of public money tied up in public procurement. And an incoming Labour government is entitled to say it comes with terms and conditions. There's a framework for public procurement, at the heart of which is dignity and respect, and we expect to see unionised jobs and support unionised businesses. So, Garfield, I think if we continue to work together on this, your campaign must go on, but, you know, it gives us that chance. It's another example, and I will keep coming back to this, because it's been my central focus. You know, we've been in opposition for 13 years, Garfield, 13 years. If we win the election, and this is why I'm so single-mindedly focused on it, and all the noise is off about everything else, we've got to win that election, because we get the chance then to bring about the change that you and others are campaigning for. So thank you for what you're doing, thank you for what you'll continue to do, and I'll work with you for it. And if we get a Labour government, and I hope that we will, then we can be in a position to do something about this. Thank you, Garfield, very, very much. I have Tam, I think.
Thanks, Chair. GMB Scotland. Oil and gas are fundamental foundations of the Scottish economy, which heat homes from Kirkcaldy to Cambridge. Labour's position on blocking new licences is a threat to Scottish jobs and the UK energy security. Without new licences, we'll be relying on imports from other countries who will reap the benefits of the jobs and taxes. The SNP have repeatedly promised a green jobs revolution, but far from being an oasis of work, Scotland's becoming a desert. We need oil and gas jobs. So when the current fields in the North Sea are depleted and Scotland's oil and gas jobs evaporate, what will you tell our members working in these sectors and the communities which will be decimated?
Yeah, Tam, look, thank you so much. Thank you for raising that. Thank you for raising that. And I absolutely share your concern about future jobs. I absolutely share that concern. And I do know that you and others and working people across the country have been let down by the Tories and let down by the SNP on this promises about jobs that never materialise. And I want to be absolutely clear. Oil and gas are going to be part of the mix for decades to come, into the 2050s. And I don't think that part of our argument is heard loud enough and clearly enough. For decades to come, oil and gas will be part of the mix. But at the heart of your question, Tam, is this crucial issue. What happens next? What happens next? And what I will never let happen is a repeat of what happened in coal mining, where an industry came to an end and nobody had planned for the future, and we're still living with the consequences. We cannot allow that to happen. And I think there is an opportunity now to seize the next generation of jobs in nuclear, in new nuclear, in renewables across the country. And there's a race on. It's going on around, look at the Inflation Reduction Act in America, look at the EU's response. There's a race on for the next generation of jobs, and we need to be in that race. The wind turbines in Whiteleys were not built in Britain because we didn't get ahead of the game. We cannot let that happen again. So we've got to seize that opportunity to get those jobs in renewables. And I have estimated there's hundreds of thousands of jobs to be had, future jobs, 50,000 in Scotland, 50,000 jobs in Scotland. And we can use the skills that we've got, we can deploy those skills, and we can make sure through GB Energy, through procurement, that those jobs are in the places that need them. Because we don't want to repeat the error of saying, you've got to move, you've got to go, we don't need to come to you, to your community, we can let you wither. We will never repeat that. But if we don't seize that opportunity, if we just sit back and wait, without acting now on our Green Prosperity Plan, then I genuinely think, Congress, that future generations will never forgive us for repeating the mistake that was made when the coal mines were closed down. So, Tam, we'll work with you on that. Thank you for raising it. It's such an important issue. Thank you, Tam. And I think I've got Joshua left. Joshua.
Hi, I'm Joshua from Southern Region, and I work at Asda at Brighton Arena, so literally just down the road. And they've recently announced that they're cutting the pay of 7,000 colleagues across the southeast of England. This amounts to 60p an hour pay cut for a group of workers who has kept us fed throughout the pandemic. Not only are Asda threatening to cut pay, but anybody who doesn't accept will face the nefarious practice of fire and rehire.
Yeah.
As you know, we are the Union of British Gas Workers, so we have seen this disgrace before. What is your message to Asda?
Well, Joshua, firstly, again, let me acknowledge the GMB campaign on this. Really important campaign. Hugely important campaign. And with it, that campaign in relation to British Gas as well, which GMB led from the front. And the answer to your question is very, very clear so far as I'm concerned. We will ban fire and rehire. It's as simple as that. It just needs to be done. And I'll just elaborate that on Joshua. And you know, if there's one thing that comes through everything I've said here, this will be a repeat of it, I'm afraid. We've pushed the government. We've pushed amendments. We've voted against the government on this. We've urged them to bring this in. They say it's the wrong thing, but they don't do anything about it. And so we're going to be stuck with it unless and until we win an election. If we win that election, we will ban it. And that's my frustration with opposition. I can stand there in Parliament on the opposition benches saying fire and rehire is wrong. We can vote against it, but we're not changing it on your behalf and on behalf of working people across the country. We will only change it, because this government's not going to budge on it. They know what they're doing. They're not going to suddenly have a turn of heart. So we have to go on, make the argument, win the election, work with you, and ban it. And that's what we will do. Thank you so much, Joshua. And thank you, Congress. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much. I think I'm waiting.
Keir, thank you, and thank you for calling for Amazon to recognise the GMB. Yeah.
Well done, you.
And we heard yesterday from our General Secretary just how important it is for our members that we have a Labour government. Thank you for coming to address Congress.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Congress.
Congress, we'll now go back to the motions. Could I ask for the speakers and movers of motion 243, 244 and 245 to come down, please? And the speaker of 243 to the rostrum. If people moving and leaving the room, can you do it quietly, please?
Congress President Cathy Cattell, Southern Region, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. proposing motion 243, housing motion. This motion originated in my branch of the GMB, Richmond and Wandsworth. Wandsworth Borough incorporates some of the most deprived and some of the most affluent areas in the country. Under the previous Tory council, huge amounts of luxury flats went up. Many of you will have seen these ostentatious developments, including the Sky Pool, which is a glass-bottomed swimming pool connecting two luxury properties opposite the American Embassy. The complex cost £1.6 billion to build, and the pool alone cost £326,000 a year to heat. So, once vibrant communities with a lot of social cohesion are now faceless blocks of flats, often left empty and owned by overseas investors. Contrast this with people living on a local estate who are forced to visit a community centre to access the warm hub which ran through the winter, allowing them to have 3 meals a day, use the Wi-Fi and keep warm. GMB members in these boroughs are often carrying out low-paid work, for example, refuse and parking services, estate cleaners and school support staff. As